Hello, and welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup, a spiritual conversation between me and a guest about life, the universe, and anything in between. I'm your host, Megan Rounds, spiritual connector, intuitive empath, energist, healer, and spiritual channel. Welcome to today's show. I'm so happy to see you here. Today's guest has been a member of the Lightworkers Lab for a little over 2 years and has recently earned the coveted distinction of Lightworkers Lab Certified Intuitive Reader. You'll find her primarily here in the main lab and in the lab Lightroom, where she hosts Intuitive Insights with Elissa Helfrey every Thursday afternoon. Her main modalities include claircognizance, clairsentience, intuitive empath, and she is a starseed as well as a multidimensional channel, interpreter, and reader. She grew up overseas until she was 11 and has traveled the world, having been on every continent except Antarctica. For some reason, that is a hard word for me to pronounce today. Antarctica. Okay. She currently resides in Lake Oswego, Oregon, with her husband Nate and 2 feline fur babies, 15-year-old Mr. Boo and 2.5-year-old Rory, who our guest lovingly calls Squish. She was a radio DJ for 3 years, and at one point her time slot beat out all of the huge radio stations for listeners, which is quite the accomplishment. She is currently a master esthetician focusing on corrective skincare for maturing skin. Her skills in this area expand beyond the physical, having channeled a diagnosis of skin cancer in a friend that was later confirmed by that friend's dermatologist. She is currently working on building a spiritual business, offering readings and possibly healing in the future. Please give a warm Lightworkers welcome to Elissa Helfrey. Hey. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good.
Hello, Lightworkers Lab. Give big to the tip jar.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Well, I am so happy that you were available to come on today, because 2 weeks ago was when we had the major tech change, and we just weren't able to get anything together in time. So thank you for your flexibility and for your willingness to be here today.
Oh, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. As many people who have watched this show know, I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, because you and I share a lot of similar interests, including that of music, which is why I had that. I mean, those have been saved for months. It's like, oh, wait, save that for Elissa.
Oh, that is fabulous. I wouldn't have thought to blare Metallica, but you know what? If anything's going to work, it's going to be them. Yeah.
Totally. I love that. It's like, well, and now if for some reason, a wolf or something, does that with me, I'm going to be at the ready. It's like,
yeah, I got to have some downloaded right there.
That's right. Loud, scary animal music or something,
I prefer Pantera.
Oh, even, yeah, totally. Yes. Oh my God.
I'm going to do it.
Oh, wow. Well, okay, so I took a little bit of extra time in the lead-in today, so I want to get right to our conversation, because I just, well, as I said, I'm very excited for it. I think other people have been too. So I always start out with the first question being to tell us a bit about your spiritual or metaphysical journey. You don't have to start at any particular point. You can start wherever works for you, and we meander and talk as much as you'd like.
Well, that's easy. I don't have that problem. How my more recent exploration has been the last 3 years. As my awakening, I was on a massage table and had a conversation, and the masseuse said, "You're a light worker. You know your light's not on, right?" And I was like, what the heck is a light worker? So I started working with him, and he became my first teacher, but the guy was 22 and didn't really have a lot, and he'd rather have the cult of him than actually teach me something. But I am grateful to him for getting me in the door, because it led me to the Lightworkers Lab. And so I just started about 3 years ago really looking into this, and I didn't, it's funny because spirit works in mysterious ways, and I woke up one day and I was like, I have to go to this crystal shop. And I had been there once in my life, and I went, and it just, everything happens for a reason. Somebody overheard me. I ended up going, God, how do I make a long story short? That's like
Well, don't
one of
make
my
it
worst
short.
things. Well, I have fibromyalgia, and I was in a lot of pain that day. And the owner of the store had overheard me saying that I was in pain, and he asked me if I used CBD. The guy sold CBD anyway, so he invited me to come. He gave me some to try, and it worked on my hands. So it's a multi-level marketing thing. So I'm like, I'll go try it out. That didn't work out. But the moral of the story is that's where I met my friend Trisha Michaels, who's probably watching. Hi, Trisha. And she has a space above the crystal shop, which she uses for metaphysical classes and things like that. And the minute we met, she thought, I love you. I love this. I love it. We're like this. We're like, okay. And I'm like, okay. And I like that day I met my spiritual family, which includes the Volbrecks, which includes a lot of people who are in the lab, but are actually here in real life. And so I am so grateful for the space, because once a month I get to go practice healing, whatever that is, whatever it looks like for me. That's where I did my first intuition work. And, that's where, like I said, I met the Volbrecks, who said, hey, try this Facebook site out. And here I am. A year later, I started it really started with the intuitive intensive. I have to give it up for the intensives in this place. It blew me wide open. I can't even believe this year, because I did the intuitive intensive, then I did the certification, then I did the mediumship intensive, and now I'm in the Akashic Records intensive.
Wow.
And I feel like I've just been through college.
Big time. Actually, I think this is, the intensives have so much information, and it very much high quality, especially for the price they charge. But as far as what you learn in it, I'd say this trumps college. This is better. Not that college is bad for those of you going, but...
No, I absolutely agree. I had no idea that I could even do half the things that I do now. So I am so grateful. This has been like a life dream for me. Like when I was obsessed with ESP in the 80s, that's what they used to call it, extrasensory perception. And I was like, if I could only, but the thing was, I was doing it. It was intuition. I just didn't know it at the time. So the fact that I get to play and live and practice with spirit is such a gift. I am so grateful.
That's awesome. Tell me, do you have any examples, and you may not, but if you do you have examples of how in retrospect you realize you were using your intuition when you didn't realize it at the time?
Well, God, there's a couple of things. What I remember from my childhood, like I said, you said I grew up overseas.
Yeah.
Well, we traveled a lot, and I saw a lot of like ritual sites and ruins and things like that. And just, I look back now, and the things that my brother and I were picking up at the time that there's no way we could have known just by being in the energy. I look back now and I'm like, wow, that was like spirits were talking to me, like, especially in like Egypt or Greece and places like that. It was like I look back now and I'm like, well, you're just surrounded by all these gods and these spirits, and I didn't see them, but I know now that they were there, put in my ear, things like that. So yeah, it's fascinating that I was able to use my empathic gifts so young, and it's just too bad. We all look back and go, if we'd only, but
Yeah.
I'm here. I got here because it happened like it was supposed to. But yeah, from a young age, I've been absorbing energy like that and just interpreting it and not knowing how or why. I just knew things.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so you knew things then, and then and you were interested in ESP and things like that, and then fast forward to now, and you're starting to reflect on some of those things and realizing just how much of those things had played a part in your life. How did that evolve for you within that period in between? And only share what you're comfortable sharing, but I'm just curious about between, because I'm doing something similar for myself. It's going back and I'm like, holy cow, I was picking up so much as a kid that I didn't realize. And now here I am kind of reflecting on that. But how has it really shown up in different time frames of my life? Are there other pinnacle points where I really recognize that that a path was opening up that I wasn't aware of yet?
Well, like a lot of us, some of us suffered some traumatic childhoods, and I started drinking when I was 12 because I couldn't handle the energy. I didn't realize, like, from junior high school and home, I couldn't function anymore. It got my brain going. Spirit was always talking to me. I didn't know what claircognizance was back then, and so I had to numb out, and I spent quite a few years numb and binge drank through high school and things like that, and then found drugs and things after high school. But I have to tell you, there was this point after high school where I started being able to lucid dream, having vivid dreams. Like, all my life, I've had deja vu. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation in itself. What is deja vu? But then again, I got a scare. I got scared, and I blocked it. And about 14 years ago, I decided to get sober. But I was still on all these medications. So it's for my fibromyalgia. But so it's been a tapering off of the medications that has opened me up even more. And so this is like, I feel like a kid. I feel like I'm living my childhood right now because I'd blocked it for so long that I'm just like, bring it. I want more. Bring it. I need more. Yeah. Teach me. So.
Have you found that, well, maybe I'll ask this a different way, but before I do that, I just want to ask those of you listening, what have you noticed about your own spiritual journey? What types of things have really stood out to you along the way that have led you to where you are now that you didn't realize until now that you can look back and recognize it? And while you do that in the comments, then my question for you, Elissa, is that that numbing out and then making the choice to allow those things that we weren't able to maybe handle earlier. How do you have like a story of how you've done that transition between the two, or was it just that you decided, okay, bring it on, and it came?
It was well, it's been a slow transition getting off medication, obviously, and I've been doing it with a doctor. And but yeah, it was funny. Like once I met that guy, and he's like, "You're a light worker," and I'm like, "Ooh, I have something special." I just started systematically removing things that I felt that I didn't need anymore, and I'm still doing that. Like Western medicine. And I'm not dissing, I'm not a doctor, okay. But my personal experience with opiates was, it was addictive. It numbed me out completely. And once I got off of them, bam, it was crazy. I realized I was physically numb, mentally numb, all those things. I mean, I just basically spent years in bed drooling on myself, and it's like, once I got
I'm laughing, but it really wasn't funny, right?
It's funny now. It's the truth, but so now it's like things are so magical, and it's like seeing Technicolor. It's everything is. I just I don't even want to sleep anymore. I'm like, there's so much to do and so much to learn. It's like open up,
and it's all energizing.
It is. It is a little over energizing sometimes, I think, but.
Well, it's something that I'm doing myself in terms of trying to recognize the emotions that I have been blocking for most of my life. And so I'm doing this from an emotional standpoint, but I think it's really similar to energy in general. I think emotions are energy. So, but the emotions I don't like, finding a way to welcome them and accept them and allow them without trying to change them has been a huge learning and journey for me. But what I find is that I've also, as a result, and people have talked about this before, but blocked those really joyful ones as well, the ones that like extreme love and joy. And I say extreme only because it's stuff that I haven't experienced before, because I've allowed this much through my husband had said this much, that there's so much more that I could be allowing in. And what I've found is that I almost have to take it incrementally, because I've said bring it on, and then I have received that high-powered energy, and then I'm like, wait, I don't know exactly, it's so overpowering in a good way, but still, how have you coped with that, if that's happened to you?
Oh yeah, it happens on a daily basis. I'm learning now to about boundaries and things like that. Like I remember the first time that I had opened up, I went to a Red Hot Chili Peppers show, and you want to talk about energy bombardment. Oh my God, that was just overwhelming. I got a headache, a heartache. It's like everybody's energy there, and that's when I kind of learned, all right, I think I better do this slowly, like you said, incrementally, because
Yeah.
it was so overwhelming. So, pardon me, I've been learning to open myself up slowly, and it's scary. And it is for a lot of us light workers, we have autoimmune diseases, and it shows up physically, painfully in our energy fields. And so it's learning what I can and can't I don't even know if I'm still on topic. Sorry. If
No,
I
you
can
are.
and what I can and can't handle, and who I can be, I mean, who I can be around, who I can't be around anymore. It's I wish I could take it all on all at once, but yeah, I'm having to learn how to do it in small doses in order to really learn from it in a way that's not excruciatingly painful and that won't overwhelm me, so that I go back into that numbing. You know,
Yeah.
I've had instances like last year when I was in the intensive that was so overwhelming because it was just kind of like a Kundalini awakening that I was just like, I gotta numb out for a minute, just
Yeah.
and I don't use those substances anymore, but it can be overwhelming, and it's no wonder that I did it for so long, because as we know, being an empath, you just pick everything up. It's like not having the tools to be able to differentiate between yours and mine and good and bad.
It
It's definitely something that has to be learned.
definitely. I think that, I learned I was an empath because I turned into an emotional sponge in a situation where all the other people who had much greater reason to be emotional weren't. Only me, the person who really didn't even know, I wasn't fully embedded in that group yet. Here I am, and they're all like, whoa, look at her, kind of strange American, because I was in a different country. And it was great. And somebody said, well, maybe you are showing the emotions they're not able to do. And somebody else had said emotional sponge. And I'm like, oh, ding, 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 big light bulb over my head. And it's, oh, wow. And ever since then, which is over 10 years ago, maybe now about 14 years, I'm still learning a lot about what that is. And so one of the things that I heard you say is that, like, with the intensive, you had to go and numb out. And I'm curious about your perspectives of doing that intentionally. Is it important to be able to still do it, even though you're on this path of full awakening? And a second question would be how? You don't use the substances anymore, and it's great that you recognize that's what you were doing, because I think that's a big part of being able to wean yourself from it, is to recognize, wow, I'm just totally numbing everything out because I don't want to feel, because it's too intense. But what do you do instead?
That's what I'm learning. I'm learning how to meditate, and to be honest, I still have there are some substances out there that work on your system to numb it down a little bit, that aren't addictive, things like that. Like, I don't know, like if anybody's ever heard of L-theanine or kava kava. There are these different natural properties that help kind of bring things down, because sometimes having fibromyalgia, my system's firing like 10 times more than a normal person, I think is what they said. Our nerves fire like 5 to 10 times more
Oh,
than a normal person's does. So I literally need a little help. But, learning how to meditate and being able to, and the biggest thing about this intensive is learning how to let go of emotions.
yes.
I think is learning how to ground and how to be okay with something and not hang on to it and let it go, and realizing that emotions are being brought up to let go, as opposed to just be like a mirror of, look what you've done. It's more like a, look what happened, it's over, let's get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I'm that's where I'm at now. It's taken me a year to finally realize that, but sometimes you gotta have a beer. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, I can't drink, but sometimes I could have used a beer. But it's okay. We take in so much energy that it's okay to turn off for a second.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm curious about, I'm just seeing if about, do you feel it when you're letting emotions go? Is there a sensation when you do it, or when you notice them emerging to a point where you know you want to let them go?
The emergence feels like reliving it is how it is to me. So I feel the trauma, I will feel the sadness, I will feel the emotions behind it. But it's now this mental thing where it's like, okay, you don't have to go back into it, just acknowledge it and let it go. So I'm grateful to all the intensives and the Lightworkers Lab for teaching me that, because I spent so many years in therapy trying to work through my stuff that, like, I'm finally like, oh, just let it go. You know, I learned it. I learned it from watching you. I learned it in the lab, not from all those people that I was paying all that money to.
Yeah. Well, and I've always been perplexed by that. Just let it go. It's been a big part of a deep dive that I've been doing around what does it mean to let it go? And so I'm always curious about how people go about doing it. And there are all kinds of different practices and techniques out there that people have incorporated. So, for you, it sounds like you just recognize you don't have to go back into it, which is a huge thing. Because it seems like a natural tendency to go back, relive, and then ruminate. I mean, not for you necessarily, but for me, for sure, in the past.
I lived in my past. I had no future, no present. I was one of those people who lived in worry about what I had done. And so I understand that 100% in regret. And what kind of life is that? No wonder I numbed out,
Yeah, exactly. I had another question going back, and this again is only share what you're comfortable sharing, but with your fibromyalgia, what are your perspectives on that, and the fact that there are so many light workers who seem to suffer from autoimmune disorders? If you have a perspective, I'm assuming you
I
do.
absolutely have a perspective. I've realized that it's actually, for me personally, and actually I've kind of become a coach to a lot of people that I know, because I've had it for a long time. People who are in my life who start to develop it, I'm able to help them with this, and I'm really grateful for that. But wait, what was the question? Oh my God, I went on a tangent.
That's okay. It was about so many light workers having autoimmune disorders in your perspective.
Thank you. Went somewhere else for a second. I feel that trauma, because fibromyalgia, if you look at, it's mostly women. It's mostly people it's usually triggered by a trauma, like a surgery or a physical, but it's shown up. I look back at my life and I see that I've had it all my life. I feel like it's trauma trapped in my energetic field from circumstances, and it's learning how to, and I'm just doing this now, is there's a Dr. Bradley, oh God, I can't remember his last name, but there's this book called The Emotion Code.
Oh, sure.
I don't know if you've ever read it, but it is fascinating, and I still have yet to try the technique, but it just rang true with me the first time I heard it, is that pain is caused by emotion trapped in our energetic field, and as it moves in closer to our body, it starts to manifest physically.
Oh.
So that's my take on fibro, is that it's actually an energetic, like almost an empathic disease.
Well, and that makes sense. It kind of aligns with things that Donna Eden, I got her name right. I was saying Barbara Eden when we talked earlier, and from My Dream of Jeannie. But we're talking Donna Eden has done some things on energy medicine, and and there's a number of other people who have talked about physical ailments being caused from the energetic field first, and then eventually manifest as physical ailments. So they start out energetically, usually because of some trauma, but not always. Trauma has extremes, or a spectrum, right? So there could be something that was really traumatic that wasn't like a war zone. But all of those things that we hold on to then eventually can manifest in our physical body. And I am fascinated by that because of, especially here in Western cultures, because of our refusal, or maybe it's not a refusal anymore so much, to discount anything that you can't see, hear, smell, touch, taste, right? And so that whole realm of energy is having these amazing and not always positive effects on us. And here we are, not doing anything until they show up physically.
And then we just numb it with medication,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to dealing with it or working through it or acknowledging it. We don't even acknowledge it. It's just like, oh, numb it, make it go away.
Yep.
But that makes, like you said, it made my whole life go away for a really long time.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, as I delve more into Eastern medicine, I go to an acupuncturist regularly. My naturopath is actually my regular physician, because I honestly don't trust doctors anymore, because they're the only people who have actually made a difference in my well-being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, you're able to you're working to wean yourself off of medication, which is amazing. When I first met you, you were in a lot of pain, and that really wasn't that long ago.
That was last year. Yeah.
So that's fabulous, and congratulations.
Thank you.
There's all kinds of ways this conversation could go. So one might be like, how are you weaning yourself off of medications? Or another could be to change gears altogether and go to like our love of music, or, you know, what role music has played in your life, or something else completely different that you would like to bring up.
Well, it's not that I don't want to talk about how I weaned it off, but it's just such an individual thing that I don't want to. I'm just not comfortable going there. I don't want to give advice to somebody that might be harmful. Mm-hmm. That worked for me, that didn't work for them.
Yep.
So
fair enough.
If you guys want to talk privately, you can PM me.
Totally, yes. I will have Elissa's information. I'm going to cut in and just say, typically I do show notes following the show, but right now my website isn't operable, and that's where I post the show notes, so they will be made available, but not quite yet. But anybody watching Elissa, you can see her name there. You can just send her a Facebook message if you want to connect with her, or a friend request, or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so what would you like to talk about?
Oh, I'm up for anything. You know, I apologize. There's some substances that I've used that aren't necessarily legal everywhere.
Oh, that's totally fine. Okay.
If anybody's ever heard of kratom, whatever you want to call it, that's, and I'll just leave it there, but that's what got me off the opiates. Don't let them make it illegal, please. Big Pharma's trying to cut it down. But
so they can regulate it themselves?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Because they can make money off of it, and we're taking it away from the opiate trade. So,
what is culturally? Where is that? Is that
Indonesia, Thailand, places like that? Unfortunately, I can't grow my own, or I would try. You know, because we have the wrong climate in Oregon for that. We have the wrong climate in Oregon for a lot of things, like sunshine.
Well, Minnesota sometimes has that too. November, the whole month, pretty much cloudy. You know. What about? So then, I want to hear more about your. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I already said it out loud. So we can go wherever you want. You just show me the way.
Well, actually, I want you to go, because you have elements of your spiritual journey that we haven't heard about. I think we got the very short and concise version. What else from that are you willing to share? Because I totally get that you may not want to share all of it, but I'm really curious how you got from traveling around to every continent except Antarctica to to becoming a DJ, somewhere in between, and then your esthetician work, and then we got how you became a light worker.
I swear, I feel like I'm a cat, and I've had like 9 different lives in this lifetime already, because they're all so compartmentalized. Like, I grew up with my father working in the oil business. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia and Aruba.
Wow. Okay. And wow. Night and day.
Yeah. Yeah. And so moving back was actually shocking. It was culture shock to me. And that's kind of where I started feeling the empath thing, was then, because like, I came in from a school where there were 10 of us in a class to a school where there were 30 people in a class, and the teachers didn't. I went from A student to D student. You know, it was it was total culture shock. So that's
Yeah.
why I started to numb out then. But how I got to a DJ, God, that's a good question. I was really into rock and roll back then, and this was like the late 80s, and growing up in the Bay Area where metal was like, that was
Ooh.
where metal came from. That's where
Yeah.
Metallica was from, that was the big deal. And they offered it as opposed to like taking a class in home economics. You could take a class and be a DJ.
Oh my
and
gosh.
and so that kind of stood out to me. But the funny thing was about this radio station is that it was broadcast all over the entire Bay Area. And like I said, we would beat out like some of the top 5 radio stations in the country with our drive time show because we were off the hook funny. And like there was a few of us who had those time slots, and it was just a way for me to finally be myself, is really what it is, and to affect the masses, I guess. In it wasn't necessarily always a good way, because that was a big sex, drugs, and rock and roll, baby. Oh yeah,
That kind of was the big era for that.
yeah, it was. But it really gave me a chance to live that extroverted life that I had been afraid of all my life. And it just gave me opportunities to hang out with people and musicians. I mean, it's funny you bring up Metallica, because they would be doing shows that we would be at, and we'd all be hanging out in a room together, and you'd be standing next to them. You're like, oh, hey, how's it going? So we all we're in the same group of friends.
Wow.
It's really bizarre to think about now, because I'm like, God, I'm old. Look at how old they are.
No.
But back then, that was like, yeah, it was an experience that's one of my best experiences, was what I got to do there. And I mean, just to be able to, I mean, my name was the cheerleader from hell. If that tells you anything about what my personality was like back then. So,
were you actually a cheerleader at one point?
I was.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I was. Yeah, see, I've been a cheerleader, I've been a DJ, I've been a light worker, I worked in real estate. I mean, I think I've done just about, my first job was at a dry cleaners, you name it, I've done it. It's one of those. I actually, my 10-year high school reunion, I got an award for the most jobs since high school.
Awesome.
But, yeah, that went over well. I got laughed at and I put it up on my mom's refrigerator. I remember that. She's like, oh, that's something to be proud of, honey.
It is.
Yeah.
You know that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I also have had a lot of jobs. So, I mean, we actually, I think collectively probably have had all jobs.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Between us two, we've done it all. Yeah, it's funny, but people don't realize that when you're a DJ too, though, you need to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And that doesn't pay very well.
I was wondering about that. I worked at Tower Records for a while, and we got awesome perks, got to all kinds of free concerts and things like that backstage sometimes. And that was wonderful, but it paid minimum wage, which at the time I think was like $3 and I don't know, 75 cents an hour. It was like, now granted, apartments were less expensive. I don't know. I mean, seriously, I couldn't afford my own place. I lived with my grandparents for a while and then had a roommate from hell, but that
Been there, done that.
She could afford the apartment. That was what I needed.
Got to do what you got to do back then.
I am really curious. I'm going to ask you an on-the-spot question. We'll see if you're comfortable doing it. But I would absolutely love to hear your DJ voice.
It's funny. My voice has actually changed. It used to be very high. You're listening to KVHS with Karen. It's like the cheerleader from hell. And the great thing about that is, and you can change your voice. You have the ability to change the way your voice sounds.
Oh, so like digitally?
I sounded amazing. Mm-hmm. I sounded amazing all the time. I had that very high,
Thank you.
Oh,
that is so cool. I figured you had a voice for it, so I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Well, and so You were in San Francisco then, and then did you become a an esthetician there, or did you do that in Oregon or someplace else?
I moved up here with my husband 10 years ago, and I had always, and like in one of my other jobs, I ran a beauty supply, and I just liked the business, and I just hate hair. I hate, I don't see, like some people see like beautiful like sculptures in hair, and I'm like, that's what mine is straight. I don't have time for that. But I knew I loved the business, and it was just something I was drawn to. And I was blessed because I was given an opportunity because I am on disability. The Social Security wants you to go back to work, you know?
Yeah.
And so they paid for school. And I happened to find out a place that did master. And a master esthetician is someone who can work for a oh my God, my words aren't working. I'm sorry. For a plastic surgeon, I'm a certified laser technician. I can do
Wow.
like all sorts of crazy things. And that's kind of why I love what I do. And that I keep that master esthetician license up is because I get to do all the crazy things that people are like, wow, that sounds like so much fun. I'm like, it is. I'm kind of sick and twisted that way. That's why I like corrective skincare. You know, sure, I'll pop that zit for you. No problem. But
Thank you for that image.
yeah, everybody.
Well,
It's fun.
so do you get to use all of these things on yourself? Do you just sit there and like do derma stuff?
Hmm. Yeah, that's why. I mean, I'm 47. I don't think I look
What?
47.
You absolutely do not look 47. No. Wow. Awesome. That's
See, it
really,
works.
I'll say. Huh.
It's
That's,
fun, and I get to use. I didn't realize I was using my intuition,
yeah.
and my energy work. And I noticed as I became a light worker and started working with these things that the results I was getting were phenomenal, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing differently. But the only thing I was doing differently was coming into myself
Yeah.
and becoming the healer that I truly am. And ooh, I can't believe I just said that. Whew, okay,
Aha.
that's the first time I've ever said that. Becoming the healer that I truly am. Ooh, that's empowering. But yeah, so it's funny how things work hand in hand. Like some people are like, well, I do Reiki, and I never realized that that's my light work right now is helping people feel better about themselves. And so that's what I do is I help people feel better about themselves and give them self-esteem. And I try to do healing while I'm in the treatment, but it's so rewarding to have people leave. And my husband, because I work out of my house, and so my husband works at home too, and he always hears clients going, oh my God, I feel amazing, thank you. He's like, you must be good. I'm like, you have no idea.
So you don't practice on him.
I've given him a facial. It's not his thing. Plus the hair kind of makes it difficult. He's kind of scruffy.
I
It's
love,
Portland. You got to have a beard.
I guess. Yes, I'm okay. No offense to any men with beards, but I'm patiently waiting for this trend to pass. It's not my
It's
favorite, but I'm
not
married. It doesn't
attractive on
matter.
everybody. Yeah, exactly.
My
Not
hu-
attractive on everybody.
my husband has not jumped on that particular trend, which is good. The minute he does, I don't know, he tried a beard before and it was kind of hilarious. So I think he just doesn't want my daughter and I to make fun of him, which is possible.
Whatever you have to do.
Exactly. So the two of you work from home together, which is something else that we share, and that my husband and I both work home together. How do you get things done?
It's really difficult because we're both Libras. So
Oh,
get anything done anyway. We never leave the house because we can't decide where to go. So there's that. But, I think it helps not having children too. We only have the fur babies. So we have quite a different relationship than a lot of people because we don't have that. And we're very, very close. And I'm really grateful because we've been together and we're in our 22nd year together. And
congratulations.
yeah. Yeah. So I'm really blessed, and he supports me 100%. And he's just, he toots my horn for me. So yeah, we're just,
Nice.
I realized that this lifetime wasn't about children or family, that it was about finding unconditional love for myself.
Yeah. I have to say that's another thing we share in that my husband and I are approaching 22 years together. We're married slightly less than that, but 22 years. That's so, what are the odds?
I know. Same background, same
Yeah,
lineage.
that's really interesting. That whole finding unconditional love is such a huge thing, and I love that. I mean, when in your life did you meet him? Were you at a place where you felt you could receive unconditional love, or is that something that transpired later?
No, Spirit put us together in a bar. We were both drunk. That's how we met. The
I
joke
love
is,
you,
and I'll
man.
say it out loud. He's the longest one night stand I've ever had.
Okay, I love that.
But that's just from being a drinker back then. But yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, and it wasn't until I really started this journey, because I beat myself up that I didn't want kids, and all that stuff that goes along with it. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I realized that, this is true. And even before the Lightworker stuff, that it's okay. This is my path. I'm here to receive what I was missing from another life somewhere along the line, and maybe that's where all this started, was my realization of, okay, it's okay to be where I am right now. Because there's a lot of people who look down on people without kids. I don't get it, but
I don't get it either. Why does it have to be a judgment thing? People who choose to have children have them, and people who choose not to don't. Why? I don't understand that either.
I don't either, but I am furiously happy. So
Good.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get here. It's taken me a long time to get here, but we're really good.
What are some things that you think are most important when on that path of self-acceptance? What are things that maybe people can, I don't know.
My biggest problem is with self-forgiveness and worthiness. And, I still struggle with it every single day. And it has to do with letting go. There's that letting go of the trauma from the past and those belief systems that were put into my head by somebody else that aren't even mine. Mm-hmm. And so it's just kind of like clawing through all that right now, and being okay with where I'm at and who I am and what it took to get here, and like forgiving the journey.
Yeah. Well, and recognizing it is a journey. And when we're on a journey, it doesn't mean we're masters. I mean, most of us typically are not masters of our lives, maybe ever, but certainly not starting out. And we go through these different things, and sometimes we may hurt people in the process, or sometimes we may hurt ourselves in the process. And then dwelling on it only continues that pattern, and we get stuck in it, right?
Exactly. And I spent most of my life there, and it's a relief to start letting things like that go, and the forgiveness behind it. Self-forgiveness is a big one. It's something that I am learning, and it's not an easy path when you've been taught to think poorly of yourself. So there's a lot of us who were brought up in households where, it wasn't okay to be yourself. And so we had to put on these faces, and we kind of became the face, Yeah. So it's breaking through and throwing out that mold and being the actual person behind the mask,
Well, and even figuring out who that person is. If a big part of my journey has been that. It's recognizing, wow, I am a master chameleon. I can adapt, and I really can adapt to pretty much any environment, and any people. I can talk to them. I may not like them all, but I can adapt. And then recognizing, wow, I am doing all of this stuff for other people, and I don't even know what my own preferences are. It's like, that's a whole journey in and of itself. Wow, what do I like? And is that, I'm so influenced by, I went to a meeting the other day and some people were like, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I could have easily signed up for all of these things. And I'm like, no, I'm being me. I'm being me now. And I just find that aspect of recognizing all of the different things. I'm almost thinking everything is, originally socially created for us, that we're creating mindsets based on what other people tell us, on what other people tell us we're supposed to think, how we're supposed to feel, how we're supposed to behave. And then the awakening process to me is like learning how to discard all of that and let it go. And I'm not sure which is harder. I think this part is.
I read this book a few years ago, and I'll give it a I can't remember her name. Her first name is Jen, but it's called You Are a Badass.
Oh.
And it gave me, she's like, I give you permission to feel this, and I give you permission to let go of everybody else's thoughts. Those are not yours, you know. And she explained how our subconscious works from the time we're like, what is it, till we're 5 years old, we're just absorbing everything. And it made all the sense in the world. And so once I read that book, and this was right at the beginning of my awakening, it gave me license to be okay with that. You know, it's okay to let go. Those aren't my feelings. And it's exciting to be like, okay, well, who am I?
Yeah.
What are my feelings? What do I believe in? And it's exciting to be able to figure out, to figure out who I am and be able to be whatever I want to be.
Exactly. Yes, I think that's the most exciting thing, is to be able to create or design who we are today, instead of walking around with a person we thought we were based on all of this crap from our whole lives in the past, which doesn't even exist anymore except in our heads.
Exactly. It's not hurting us anymore. We can let it go.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, thank you. I think that's really helpful, that self-forgiveness piece, because I think we carry around a lot of shame as women, as people in general. It's something that socially helps to contain behavior. And, you know, we don't need it.
No, we don't. And yeah, it's to control the masses is really what it is. And that's a whole nother subject. But yeah, I agree. It's letting go of the things that no longer serve you. And when I first heard that statement here, it was in the intuitive intensive where I heard letting go of things that no longer serve you. It just rang true. I'm like, I have a whole bunch of baggage I'm letting go right now, you know?
Yeah. So how does intention and awareness play into this for you? Because like you had just mentioned in the intuitive intensive, letting go of those things that no longer serve you, it seems to me really easy to not know what serves or doesn't serve until it enters our awareness.
That's exactly it. It's weird how this year, in going through all these intensives, it's called an intensive for a reason. It's intense. And
Yes, it is.
it's once I opened up to spirit and I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Spirit's delivering these things to me slowly, and I'm grateful. I was like, how come I'm not having these huge Kundalini experiences like these other people? And I realized, I was realizing this the other day because I was getting the comparisons when I was in the Akashic Records intensive, and it's like, okay, Spirit's giving it to me in my own time to deal with, and if I had been given it another way, like this other person, I couldn't handle it. So I'm appreciative of the small piecemeal instances I'm being given to let go of the past, because I don't think I could handle a Kundalini rising experience.
They are intense. I know that I've had that experience and didn't know what it was, and it was really freaking me out. And then now I can recognize when there's some aspect of that showing up again. It doesn't necessarily help me prepare better for it, other than, at least I'm aware. But I think that comparison piece that you mentioned is a really key piece to, I kind of think it's one of the things that is an ongoing development piece as well. Every now and again, even if you feel like you've already gotten past it, I think that then something new comes up to say, well, what about this part? And recognizing that we are all, especially after being taught that we should all kind of be the same, that actually we are at our best when we are ourselves and our own unique, different selves. And there are going to be similarities we share, but there are also unique differences. And a big part of that is, I think, when we start comparing, because oh, well, such and such got this message, or somebody did this, or they have this, or all of those other things, and I don't, what was me? And it's comparing that whole piece about it. It's a kind of part of self-rejection in a way that I think comes along with this, on the opposite of self-acceptance, but can lead to it.
That's funny. I just had a flash to my life when you were talking about that and not following the path and how it was hard to not fit in. But, I'm so grateful I never fit in. Oh my God, it was tough, but I wouldn't be where I am right now if I fit in. Thank you. And it's natural to want to fit in. It's a tribal thing. It's instincts from back when we had to survive. So.
Yeah.
And then society puts all that stuff on top of it that you all have to look the same and you all have to be the same. And so, of course, we grow up thinking, well, if I don't look like Betty Joe down the street, then something's wrong with me internally. So
it took me years before I wore my hair curly. It's always been curly and a lot curlier than now. And there was a time when I made a specific intention I had a break from work and I went back with curly hair. And it was actually a thing for me because at the time, women with curly hair were not considered professional. And it was it was like they had to, I always straightened my hair. My mom straightened her hair because you were taken more seriously. And then otherwise there are these unconscious biases most of the time that was like, she's wild and unruly because of her hair, and it's so, ridiculous, but it really
it's true though. I remember that.
And I was so nervous going to work, and then everybody's like, I love your hair, it's great. And, thank you. But wow, did it take me a long time to get to that point. I think I was in my 30s. And
I love it.
Thank you. It's winter, and so it doesn't curl quite as much because the air is dry, but in summer it's still, it's like I want to keep this curl. I hope it stays. I love my curl.
It's great.
In part because it allowed for me to feel more individual, like more unique. In a sense, that I wasn't trying so hard to fit in like I used to.
And it's like being yourself. And I hear just being in the hair business or in the beauty business alone, I've watched, I don't want this to sound wrong, but African American women dealing with naturally curly hair, they have this beautiful hair, but there's, society's like, well, you don't look like the rest of society. And I think it's so wrong because it's gorgeous and accept your natural self,
I see a lot more of that self-expression now, and I'm really happy about that. I see people coming out of that predefined box that nobody particularly agreed to except for a select few. And it makes me really happy to be alive at this time because of that freedom of self-expression that, Summer of Love and stuff like that was maybe the beginning of it, but it's really coming around full circle in a much bigger and more profound way. And I'm happy to see that.
Well, that's why I love living where I do, is because it's so weird and everything is accepted. Yeah. And you walk down the street in Portland, Oregon, and you're going to see every walk of life.
Yep.
People own their stuff, and it's fabulous. And it's taught me a lot. Living here has taught me a lot about being true to myself. Mm. I think it makes a big difference, the community you reside in. And sometimes we have to hide and be who we are at home. But I'm really blessed that I moved here because I couldn't be the person that I am at home. Yeah. I'm normal here.
But San Francisco was kind of the place where it started in some respects.
In some respects, yes. But, that was my old life. So the old people are there and, that not San Francisco itself, but the old life.
Sure.
Of the person that I used to be.
I have a question for you about that in that, how are you with your former life? How are you have you ever been asked to reconnect with people from that life or to go back to visit certain areas where you had those types of experiences? And if so, how have you worked that?
Oh, yeah. I used to have to play the game back. I actually, this is terrible, but I kicked my mom out of my life for that reason. I was just like, I can't, it's too detrimental for me to have those people in my life right now. And it's taken a lot of cord cutting and it's been painful, but my God, am I better for it?
Yeah. Well, and I think boundaries.
It took me a long time to get here though. Yeah.
Boundaries was another thing that you had mentioned that you're working on now, but I think maybe with the, awakening and recognizing all of those things you felt earlier but weren't able to handle. How do they play a role in your life today?
Boundaries are tough, especially being an empath, learning to what to take on, what's mine, what's not. It's a constant daily, all right, is this emotion mine? Is this my husband's? I pick up my cat's emotions, for the love of God, you know. I swear to God, I can feel, we had these neighbors behind us. They were right behind my wall, and they would fight all the time, and I could feel it, and I was angry, and I couldn't figure out it was them until they moved. You know,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, all right. So it's a constant learning experience, and you know, this is why I'm so grateful to everybody for posting everything in the lab, because I have learned so much from everybody here, and I don't know that I could have handled this awakening if I hadn't had this community, because I wouldn't know what to do. You know,
Yeah.
taking on everything.
Well, and it is really hard to know when something's yours and when it isn't. I get somebody just was it, I don't, was it you? It was either you or another person I mentioned about that going to the taekwondo thing, and
Oh, that was you. Yeah.
oh my gosh, and I'm like, anxiety producing situation, and I had this whole spot picked out to sit where it was the most tolerable location, and somebody else had already pegged it and got there early just to sit there because the experience was overwhelming for her in the past, and also had a traumatic and very experience because of all of the people. But it's also, somebody had asked about the energy of that place, and it didn't really occur to me to think about the place. Which is like, why not? I would have asked it if somebody else just didn't even, I just didn't think of it. And so when you mentioned the neighbors arguing and not noticing it until they left, I'm really curious how to, and not that you have this figured out, but if you do, how can you tell when it's residual energy that's already there? You come into the place, you adopt it or absorb it, and then something changes and then you recognize it. But is there a way to find it earlier?
If you find out, let me know, because
Okay.
I wish I had the answer to that, because that's exactly what I deal with now. It's like, what's yours, what's mine, how to get rid of it, how do I smudge the heck out of my house all the time, because that's the only way I know how to deal with the energy.
Yeah.
So if I could surround myself in white sage smoke constantly, I think I would walk around like this all day long, just like, get away. You know?
Do they have like clothes, what is it, wool balls or things that for people who pack away their clothes that smell like sage, or are there dryer balls that smell like sage, or
Yeah.
laundry detergent? Because if there are, please post it in the comments. Because I could totally use that. And also for the people who are watching, if you have experiences like what we're talking about, please go ahead and list them there. I go back after every conversation and respond, and Elissa will see the ones that are important to her to see as well. And also, if you are an empath and you have figured out how you can tell whether it's yours or not, I know asking that question is one thing. That doesn't always work for me, especially if I'm in the energy. For some reason, if I feel like I'm totally in it, asking myself if it's mine or not, it's almost like I am playing a trick on myself. It's like, am I really feeling? Is it really mine? It's like maybe it's confidence. But anyway, please do post that in the comments.
Yeah, please, because I have the same problem you do. It's like, is this mine? Am I really feeling this? Who is this? Where is this coming from? Oh my God, it's like, please, somebody help. I do have to say, I love Stephanie Kathleen Carpenter's moon spray.
Oh.
She taught me how to make that, and I make a new moon water spray.
Ooh.
Because new moon water is clearing, and then I put white sage essential oil in it. And I put a little piece of obsidian in the bottom for grounding. And I carry that with me, and I will spray. Get out of my way. I'm going to spray.
I will post Steph's stuff in the comments following this. She's a moderator, and she does all of these things. And I'll post her stuff if you're not aware of who she is. But yeah, her sprays are fabulous. In fact, I don't know if he's still here, but when I went to Bliss Retreat a couple of years ago, she had a Chris Hoffman spray, which is the one I chose because I just love the way that smells. So yes, Chris, you have a fan.
That's awesome.
I love that you're making it. Is that something that you're interested in doing more of? Like, like making your own sprays or other things like that?
I make them for friends and
Oh, you
things
do?
like that, and people who need them, but I've never thought of monetizing it. This is the first time I've ever thought of monetizing my gifts. So it's a weird
It's a whole other journey.
juxtaposition. Yeah. Because people expect, well, you're a light worker, you're psychic, it's free. It's like, oh, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
There's that confidence and stuff right there. Yep.
one of the things I was hoping to learn how to make, and I haven't gotten around to getting any of the ingredients, I'm not even sure what they are, is Florida spray. Have you heard of that? Florida water, I mean.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I'm fascinated by it. Somebody brought it to a healing circle once and sprayed it, and it really actually did make a difference. And I've heard of people using Florida water, like with their kids, as monster spray,
Yeah.
and things like that. And so I'm interested in that as well.
Yeah, I really like the smell of it. But there was this kind that they had that it's like Murray and Langham's or something like that, and they used to have it where it was made in New York, or it said New York and Peru, and they used like Peruvian water. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that anymore. And so I mean, not that if I made it myself, I'd use, regular Minnesota water. So it's not like I'm going to go to, well, maybe Tina will go to Peru to get it. No, she's been there. But
all right, Tina, hook it up.
That's right.
We want a case.
I know she uses Florida water. Yeah, maybe she, awesome.
We'll talk to Tina.
That's right. Yeah, so I mean, what I'm super happy to hear. I didn't realize it's been so recent since your awakening. What you would define as your awakening. That's 3 years. You said is incredible.
Yeah.
What a journey.
And it was really after Body of Light last year that we were in with Lauren that it all really just started coming together. So it's recent but cool.
Very cool. And the fact that you're exploring all of these different areas of light work and doing it really quickly through these intensives, it's like that. I love that you're just you've stepped into this 100%, it seems.
I've jumped in feet first, and I kind of didn't know what I was getting into, but I'm glad I did because I wouldn't change it. It's been one heck of a year just with all these intensives, and I highly recommend them next year if you haven't done them. Oh my God, you will learn so much. The teachers are amazing. We are so lucky we have this space.
I agree.
So lucky.
Yeah. And I'd say also, besides the learning, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't gone as far in the intensive journey as you have, but it seems like there's a lot of confidence building too in your own spiritual gifts.
Absolutely. And you're given the chance to practice and the fact that you're given a chance to fail. Like Crystal will even say, our own Crystalline Conf will say, if this is a safe place to fail. And that's how you start. I mean, we're all brought in with this, like, oh, we have to be perfect the first time out. At least that's in my mind. And so it's been great to have the camaraderie, and it's helped boost my confidence enough that, yeah, I can say, yes, I am. I am an intuitive reader. I'm a psychic. I'm going into the Akashic Records every day. Yeah. So.
And I didn't hear it, but healer's in there somewhere too, I think.
Oh, yeah, healer. And I'm working on the healing part. I will be the healer. Everybody who's ever read me for the last 3 years throws healer in there, so I got to figure out what that's all about. But Spirit's showing me slowly.
Yep, it'll emerge when it's time, right?
Right.
Well, we have just a few minutes left, so what I want to do is try to go through the comments. I'm not going to add them to the live feed today. I may show everybody here what it is to do these comments live, so you know for the future. I'm seeing a lot of community sprays. A shout out to Stephanie. Awesome. Some people really like the book that you'd mentioned. Is that the Emotion Code? I think so.
Yes, the Emotion Code, and you are.
And You Are a Badass. Yes, there's another person who I'm connected with. I don't actually know that she's in this group, but who showed me that book, and I'm like, that is cool, and I love the title, of course, so that's really awesome.
Yeah, the way she writes is like right up my effing alley, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yes. Well, yeah. And I like the things that have a rebellious attitude or an edge to them about that. That seems to really resonate with me. It connects to that part of myself that's always wanted to be rebellious. And then, you know, it's the opposite of the chameleon, right? It's like,
Exactly.
bring more of her out.
Yeah, the rebel. It's given me license to be the rebel. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yes.
Permission. Yes.
Mhm.
Elissa, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Thank you for this opportunity, and thanks everybody for hanging in and watching. I just appreciate you giving me the chance to speak my truth.
Oh.
And I love the Lightworkers Lab. If you're not a member, if you're watching this on YouTube, check it out because it's an amazing, intentional community.
Yes. Positive, supporting, awesome people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for, again, your flexibility with coming back again today, where last time didn't work because of tech. And for sharing your amazing story with us and your perspectives on these different things. I had a really fun time, and I hope you did too.
I did too. Thank you so much.
Take care.